Welcome to the Mindset Architect Podcast, where it's all about creating the life you want, the business you want, and making a real difference. Join us in unlocking the code to true success. And now your host, Tony Caliendo, Master Coach with Rethink Coaching.
Welcome to the Mindset Architect Podcast, episode number 132. I'm Tony Caliendo, Executive Coach here at Rethink Coaching. And as always, I just want to take a moment and acknowledge and appreciate that you're sharing your time with me. Time truly is our greatest asset. And the fact that you're willing to share your time with me truly does mean a great deal. Thank you so much for being here. Today's episode is really around your potential belief that you've hit capacity when that's not actually what's happened. And that's a really common thing for us as leaders, owners, entrepreneurs. It really can happen more often than we think, where capacity is a false signal to us. And I want to talk about that today because it's really important that we look at things differently. So the number one thing for you to consider about capacity is that it's a signal, not a stop sign. I think as a high performer myself, and I have the privilege of coaching a lot of high performers, at times we think that we interpret capacity as overload, that we've reached a point of really no return, like we've maxed out. And really all it means is that your systems, your current focus, your current identity are simply maxed out, not your true potential. I think I've shared with you in a couple previous episodes that I wrote a book, which is in the process of being published and it'll be out this fall. And what I realized happened, and I was talking to my coach about this was a capacity moment for me. I added the task of writing a book, and I did not eliminate anything else. Now, if you've ever written a book or you know an author who's written a book, there's a lot of authors who this is their full-time job. And it takes a great deal of consistency and commitment to get the words out of your brain onto paper in a way that makes sense to a reader. And so I quickly hit a place of what I call capacity, like, oh my gosh, I can't do another thing. I'm burnt out. I'm maxed out. And I remember talking to my coach about it. And they simply said to me, okay, you've added a major project. You've really added another full-time job to your current commitments, to your current activities, but you haven't removed anything. So have you really hit capacity, or have you just not managed your key performance indicators very well? And you're still doing things that you really shouldn't be doing. So what felt like a false ceiling to me, I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do. What's going to happen to my other businesses when I go and do this? And I was experiencing extreme decision fatigue. My focus was really scattered. I would sit down and had my time blocked to write, and it just wasn't the right moment to write, and my focus was on the other things that I should or could be doing or that I used to do at that time. And so my focus was really scattered. And my identity was challenged a little bit. You know, am I someone who's leading a coaching company, real estate? Am I an author? What is my identity in that current moment? Because I was wearing so many multiple hats. And really what really was happening was that my body and my brain were simply asking for refinement or clarity, trying to figure out, like, what the heck are you doing? And it wasn't about doing more, because I was clearly doing a lot already, and it wasn't about adding more to my plate. It was really about identifying what was diluting my energy, or things that I didn't need to be doing any longer to create the space for this next huge level of growth. What needed to go away to clear the space for the growth versus I've hit capacity, I'm maxed out, I can't do any more, I'm going to quit. That's where my brain was for a moment in this process. And to be honest with you, the book process was much more difficult than I thought it was going to be. It started well over a year ago and has just become a part of my daily routine now. And I realized that I had way more capacity, and it was never about maxing out. It was really about clarity around what I should and shouldn't be doing. The number two thing that I love that my coach had me do was celebrate the capacity moment. And I really was in a headspace of, I can't believe I'm doing this. I got a little resentful versus who gets to write a book? Who gets to have a phenomenal agent that gets you with a powerful publishing house that loves your concept of a book and signs a contract with you? It was more of a beating myself up, like, what have I done? Have I, caused myself harm? It was really this kind of pathetic moment where I lost sight of what I should really be grateful for. And I remember listening to, I think it was either a podcast or one of her books, Oprah, or one of her shows. And she said something that really stuck with me about this celebrating the capacity moment. And she said, until you're grateful for what you have, God, the universe, whatever you believe in, for me, it's God, really won't deliver anything else because you're stuck, right? You're not grateful for the incredible opportunities that are in front of you. And it's like they want to hit the pause button for you so you can get comfortable with it before they allow you to experience anything more. And I think this is really important as a leader, that when you feel like you've hit a capacity moment, that you actually pause and just acknowledge what you should be celebrating. The fact that you've outgrown a previous version of yourself. I did. I was not only an entrepreneur leading a couple of businesses, I now was an author, and I was outgrowing this old vision or this old version of me. This moment of being at capacity should be evidence of your momentum, not failure, right? You don't reach capacity by not being in momentum. It's really something you should honor and celebrate versus resisting or resenting, which is where I have to be really honest, I was for a moment. And this is what I love. There's so many people out there that would just appreciate ever reaching capacity, and they don't. And here you are reaching meaningful capacity, and we're not celebrating it. That to me is a shame, because capacity means you're playing all out. You're leaving nothing on the field. You are crushing it on the daily, that your amount of capacity has been saturated. That to me is a great thing to celebrate. And it took me a minute to get out of kind of a victim-y mode of, what have I done? I can't do this. I've taken on too much. I'm going to go backward in my business. And it was just that little shift in mindset, or that shift around the story around celebrating this, that really made the biggest difference. Hitting capacity just simply meant that growth is happening, and that I hadn't grown stagnant, that I was experiencing amazing new things, that I was privileged as a human being to know what it feels like to have grown to the place that my capacity felt challenged. This is important, truly, truly important. And it goes back to, again, gratitude, right? Celebration, gratitude to me are similar. And I hear those words that Oprah said at one point, that until I became grateful for the fact that I hit capacity, I wasn't A, going to be able to do anything about it, or B, given the opportunity for more. I wasn't going to be able to create the space to bring on even more and raise my level of capacity. Celebrating is really, really, really important. I have to say that it was questions from my journaling that brought me to this realization of celebrating. And it really is just checking in with myself to say, hey, what have I built that got me here, right? Built a great coaching company. I built a couple of other businesses. Now I'm building a writing business, if you will. Being an author is really another business of writing. And what is working extremely well for me right now? And where have I already expanded that maybe I don't have any capacity to expand anymore without doing some other activities, which we're going to talk about. So your clarity in this situation really does begin with appreciation, not just acceleration. Like breaking through to the next level of capacity is going to be hindered until you take a moment to celebrate where you are. Number 3 thing to think about is identify false capacity versus true capacity. Sometimes we're just tired. Like at the end of the day, we're just tired, and we think that it's because we've hit capacity. But it really is something that we've self-created through noise or stories in our brain. I know when I had to turn in 3 chapters, and I'd never written a chapter in a book before in my entire life. And it required different energy from me. And at the end of the day, I remember thinking that I was just exhausted and I potentially tapped out. And it was this story I was creating in my head. Who did you think you were? Why did you think you could do this? You've added this on. This is taking a lot of time. You don't know what you're doing. It was all of this noise that was going on. And the reality was that was a false sense of capacity versus true capacity. I had enough gas in the tank to write a book and do other things. I was starting to slide into an area that I do not like being in and questioning either I'm going to be an author or I'm going to do this versus embracing it as that's false capacity. When you live in a place of or, true capacity is and. I'm going to be an author and run a coaching company. I'm going to be an author and run my other organizations. That to me was a true identifier of it's false capacity. When I flip into an or, it's false capacity. I'm giving my brain an easy out. I'm giving my brain and mind a simple way of saying, oh, I've maxed out. I can only do one or the other. I can't do it all. And while you can't always do it all, you can certainly create the path to do multiple things versus being in an either or. So false capacity will show up in your world as maybe too many priorities, poor boundaries, reactive calendar versus proactive calendar, decision clutter. Like you just aren't taking a moment to be clear on where you're headed. And so you feel like you've maxed out in your capacity and saying yes to things that you shouldn't be saying yes to because you used to be able to do that. Now you've filled that space with other things and you cannot randomly say yes. True capacity is when your calendar is focused, when you have clear priorities, when you've got strong energy management, when you're still feeling stretched. You know, it's, am I maxed out or am I maxed out about the wrong things? I think that's the question to ask with this false sense of capacity. What am I doing that I no longer need to be doing, that are no longer serving me, that if I got rid of, would allow the space for more capacity? Because false capacity is holding on to everything and not assessing what really needs to happen to open up the space for more to happen. The number 4 thing, and this is really part of Less Over More team, is subtraction before expansion. Now, I know better. When I agreed to write the book, when I pitched and got picked up by an agent, I should have had a moment of subtraction in my world of everything else I was doing. Yet, I just went into it like typical, I can handle it. I mean, I can write a book, not a big deal. And it is a big deal. And what I didn't do was subtract before I expanded. I just piled it on. I just like, bring it on. I can do it. I can handle this. And I should have taken a moment to honor subtraction. And so I didn't do what I've learned is really important is a subtraction audit. So I agreed to write a book. It came about in kind of a fun way through a friend and encouragement. And then my agent showed up, and I've talked about this before. It's just a series of God moments that lined up that were a clear indicator that it was the right time for me to write a book. What I should have done is done these 3 layers of subtraction, asking myself, what tasks can I subtract to create the space for more capacity? Writing a book. What am I doing that no longer requires my level of talent? What's habitual but not high impact? And we've talked about this in the success audit that I've shared in previous episodes. It really is like, what am I doing that I don't really need to be doing anymore? That I'm doing it, but somebody else could do it and probably do it better because that's their skill set. It's no longer mine. It was at one point. It isn't any longer. Decision subtraction, next layer of subtraction. Where am I redeciding the same things repeatedly and what can be systematized or standardized? So there's a lot of things in my business that I was having to make decisions about multiple times. That should have been an indicator to me that I didn't have the right system in place. So One of the things is decision subtraction, meaning where am I having to make a lot of decisions about the same thing over and over, and using that as an indicator to I could create a system for that and not have to make that same decision over and over and over. It's almost like creating a flow chart for yourself of if this, then that, or if this, then that. And I didn't do that when I was taking on this new opportunity. Number 3 was energy subtraction. That's the third layer, right? So we've got task subtraction, decision subtraction, and now we've got energy subtraction. Who or what is constantly draining me? What meetings no longer deserve my attention or space in my life? This was one of those things that I had to make a decision, which was really challenging. I was running a group program last year, and while I loved it and I loved the people that were in it, it was becoming draining in a way that wasn't helping move things forward. So when I started looking at where my energy vampires, I had to start looking at what am I doing that was draining energy versus adding it. And I made some decisions to eliminate a couple programs that I was involved in, that I led, that we were running. And that energy subtraction was a huge boost for creating space for me to do more. And it was just taking a moment to back up. So don't do what I did. I said yes to writing a book before I did this. I said yes to writing a book, and I got to a level of frustration. I got to a level of capacity really, really quickly because I didn't do this audit, this subtraction audit. Really, really important. If you're thinking about taking on a new role, a new program, adding to what you're currently doing, I would really recommend that you do this subtraction audit first before you jump in. So I laugh, right? Ready, aim, fire. I fire, ready, aim. And I did it backwards. I was fortunate enough that I knew to go back and do this to get me out of capacity because I know my capability. I know I'm able to do more things. It was just a mental story that I was carrying around that was keeping me from moving forward. Number 5 thing is upgrade the identity that got you here. I love this. Sometimes capacity is not operational. It's identity based. So it kind of goes back to the what am I doing that no longer requires my level of talent, right? That subtraction audit. There are certain behaviors that we did that built our current success, yet they limit the next level of success that we could experience. So there are things that you do that you don't really have to do anymore. That if you allowed somebody else to do, it would open up the door for you to do more. However, we tend to hang on to old identities, as we're moving forward, because let's face it, if you're an entrepreneur or an executive, you did things to get you to where you are now. It didn't just magically happen. You were doing things, and you might still be operating in those old identities. You might operate as a doer. You might operate as a fixer. You might operate as a closer. You might operate as a controller. Those are things that got you here. Now, if we want to bust through and not feel like we've reached a ceiling of capacity, we need to turn into the architect, the strategist, the multiplier, the simplifier. Those are the roles that are going to help us get out of this mindset of capacity and move into creating more space for success. So the version of you that built the current level of success that you're experiencing may not be the version that is going to get you through the feeling that you've maxed out in capacity. I think about it. If I stayed, I've talked about this on previous podcasts. If I stayed as the doer in everything, and I think about when I first became a realtor, I was the doer in everything. And had I stayed in that and not grown a team, or had I stayed in that and not taken myself to the next level, I would have maxed out. My capacity would have maxed out. However, when I took on that role of leading a team, I became an architect. I began to work on my business versus in. And I think that's the biggest difference in an identity shift. Get out of the person that's working in the business, the doer, the fixer, the closer, the controller, and move into the person that's working on the business, the strategist, the architect, the multiplier, the simplifier. That's who you need to become. You need to move out of working in and working on so that you don't max out in capacity. It's a huge shift for some of us that are control freaks. I'm number one control guy. I'm a driver. I like to get things done. I expect people are going to get things done in my perceived timeline. And so I hold on to things. It wasn't until I let this go and made a change that I was able to make the biggest difference and not reach capacity ceiling over and over and over, because I was able to change the way I thought. This is more intentional leadership. This is how you stay out of, I've maxed out, I can't do anymore. You give up the things that you no longer have to do. You're not stuck. You're not stuck. When you feel like you are and you feel like you've maxed out on capacity, think about it as it's an invitation to evolve. That is all it is. When you've reached capacity, when you perceived capacity, it's just your invitation being handed to you to say, hey, this is your opportunity to evolve. Do you want to, or do you want to stay stuck? It is 1,000% up to you. Your capacity will expand when your focus sharpens and you start to realize, what can I let go of and what can I do differently? You can do things at a higher level when you let go of your old identity. When I became an architect of my business, an architect of my life, a strategist of my life, I was able to do fewer things at a higher level. I let go of the stuff I didn't need to do anymore. It's part of being a leader, identifying where your talents are and letting the stuff go that you used to have to do, but you don't have to do anymore. But leaning into the things that are still going to challenge you, right? It's that friction piece that we talked about in the last episode. Being able to focus your energy and attention where the greatest growth can happen and removing that other stuff takes away the feeling of being maxed out and at capacity. It's really, really a beautiful invitation to grow versus your limit. And I really want you to hold on to that. The last thing I want to talk about is, creating a breakthrough rhythm. So breaking through capacity is not just a one-time push. It's going to be a repeatable rhythm. Unless you want to stall out and not do anything else, which most of us always want to be changing and growing to some capacity, the breakthrough cycle is allowing yourself to expand. You'll feel capacity. So you expand and then you feel capacity. Then you refine. Then you subtract, right? You go through that subtraction audit. Then you are able to focus on the right things. And then guess what? You get to expand again. So it's 6 things will happen. You'll expand. You'll feel like you're hitting capacity. It's a false sense, but you're going to feel it. Then if you take a moment and refine and subtract, subtraction audit, then it allows you to focus on the most important things you should be focused on, which allows you to expand again, which is going to make you feel like you've hit capacity again. These 6 things are a repeatable breakthrough cycle. If you do not, you're going to get to capacity and think you're done. And you're not. You've got more gas in the tank than you think you have. Growth is cyclical. So running through these 6 things is really normal. I think we want to normalize that we never get, maxed out or that we can't get beyond it, when the reality is we can. Capacity moments will keep returning. They just will. Even though I did some subtraction, I'll be honest with you, there was a time after the manuscript was written and submitted, right? I thought, I can take a deep breath now. Yep, that's when a lot more work actually starts to happen. It goes to editing. It comes back to you with suggestions. You have to go back through and go through what the editor recommends and are you in alignment? Do you want to push back? What do you want to do? I thought I had got to a level like, okay, the manuscript is done. I'm good. And what had happened is I hit another level of capacity because now other things were required of me to do as the author. And I realized that I'd hit this again. So I needed to go back and do another subtraction audit. I needed to go back and see what I could do so that I got out of that mindset of I've maxed out at capacity and can't do anymore. And I'm about to break and lose my mind. Just acknowledging that we're in that constant cycle. I think especially as entrepreneurs, we're going to be in that cycle. As executive leaders, we're in that cycle. We're constantly looking for ways to grow. It doesn't always mean more. It's the right more. And sometimes the right more is not increasing the demands, but really just focusing on how to create the best experience for yourself, your team, and your business. That's the biggest gift. So just know that you're going to hit a capacity limit at some point in your career, in your life. And to really sit back and walk through these things, the subtraction audit is probably the most important thing you can do before you agree to take something else on that's going to make you hit that capacity again pretty quickly. And then just realize you're going to go through those 6 steps. You're going to clear it out to the point where you can focus on the right things, and you're going to grow and expand again. And you're going to feel like you hit capacity, and we get to do it again. And then we get to do it again, and we get to do it again. Growth is inevitable. And what's what I think I love the most about what I get to do, I'm never bored. I think about the privilege I have been given to write a book. I think about the responsibility that comes along with that. I think about all of that. I think, how blessed am I that I got to do this? And the only way I get to do this is by realizing that I have far more capacity than I give myself credit for, as long as I implement tools to keep it in alignment. I hope this helps you out. I think all of us at some point experience this. Some of us give up, and that's what I do not want you to do. Some of us just give up and throw in the towel and say, hey, I'm done. I've maxed out capacity. I can't do anymore. And we back off, when all we needed to do was refine and subtract to allow us to have that breakthrough and realize it was a false sense of capacity. All right, team, go make it an awesome week, and we'll see you soon. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, you must come check out the Mindset Architect Group Coaching Program. It's our monthly program where we explore the power of your mindset, help you identify what you truly want in business and life, and then help you reach those goals. Come check us out at rethinkcoaching.com/group-program. That's rethinkcoaching.com/group-program. We'll see you there.